The conference room fell into a silence so complete that even the ticking clock seemed too loud. A billionaire CEO had spent 5 years trying everything to make his deaf daughter smile again after the tragic accident that stole her hearing and shattered her confidence. The world's greatest specialists had failed. Expensive therapies had failed. Endless hope had slowly faded into heartbreaking acceptance. Then, without warning, a struggling single father wearing a faded work shirt gently raised his hands and began speaking in sign language. Within seconds, the little girl's eyes filled with light, her trembling lips curled into the brightest smile anyone in that room had seen in years, and hardened executives who had negotiated billion-pound deals found themselves wiping away tears they never expected to shed. If you believe kindness can change lives, forgiveness can heal broken hearts, hope should never be abandoned, and second chances matter, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us of the goodness still living in this world. Graham Foster had never imagined that his life would become a constant race between survival and fatherhood. Ever since his wife passed away from a sudden illness 3 years earlier, every sunrise meant another exhausting day of balancing construction jobs, school lunches, overdue bills, and comforting his 7-year-old son, Owen, who still whispered good morning to his mother's photograph before leaving home. Graham never complained because he believed children remembered effort more than excuses. He worked with tired hands, aching shoulders, and a heart that carried grief quietly, refusing to let his son see how frightened he often felt about the future. Long before tragedy entered his own life, Graham had volunteered at a community center where he learned British Sign Language from deaf children and their families. He had started simply because one lonely boy sat alone every afternoon while everyone else played. Graham wanted that child to feel included, and over time he discovered that hands could speak with incredible beauty. Even after years passed, he continued practicing because he believed every language opened another door into someone's heart. Across the city, Helena Whitmore had built one of Europe's most successful technology companies through relentless determination. Newspapers called her brilliant, fearless, and impossible to impress. Investors admired her confidence, competitors feared her intelligence, and employees respected her discipline. Yet behind the polished image stood a mother carrying invisible heartbreak. Her daughter, Elodie, had once been the happiest child anyone could remember. She loved singing loudly, laughing at birds in the park, and asking endless questions about the world. Then one terrible afternoon, a distracted lorry driver caused a devastating collision. Helena survived with minor injuries, but Elodie permanently lost her hearing. Although the little girl recovered physically, something inside her changed forever. She stopped smiling, avoided eye contact, and withdrew from nearly everyone except her mother. Helena blamed herself every single day. She filled Elodie's life with the finest specialists, therapists, tutors, and educational programs money could buy. Every expert promised progress, but the joyful sparkle that once lived in her daughter's eyes remained hidden. Helena would have traded every company she owned just to hear one genuine laugh from her little girl again. One sunny morning, Graham arrived at Whitmore Technologies to repair damaged woodwork in one of the executive conference rooms after a delivery accident. He was grateful for the temporary contract because it meant he could finally pay Owen's school excursion fee without borrowing money. While measuring replacement panels, Graham noticed unusual tension throughout the building. Employees spoke quietly, avoiding eye contact with senior management. Everyone knew Helena's daughter was visiting the office for the first time in months. They also knew such visits usually ended quickly because Elodie became overwhelmed by unfamiliar environments. Around midday, Helena walked through the corridor holding Elodie's hand. The child stared silently at the floor while executives greeted her with careful smiles that received no response. Expensive toys, colorful gifts, and cheerful decorations had all failed to spark interest. As Graham carried a toolbox past the conference room, a small stuffed rabbit slipped from Elodie's arms without anyone noticing. He gently picked it up and approached slowly, making sure not to frighten her. Instead of speaking, he smiled softly and signed a simple sentence. He told her that her rabbit had been looking for its best friend. Elodie's head lifted instantly. For a brief second, Helena froze. Then Elodie answered. Not with words. With her own hands. The room seemed to stop breathing. Helena stared in complete disbelief as Graham continued signing naturally, asking the rabbit whether it had been brave enough to protect its owner during today's adventure. Elodie carefully replied, explaining through signs that the rabbit had tried very hard but became tired. The conversation lasted less than a minute. Yet something extraordinary happened. The little girl's face transformed. A shy smile appeared. Then another. Finally, a joyful grin spread across her cheeks as she hugged the rabbit tightly before looking directly into Graham's eyes with complete trust. No one moved. Several executives quietly lowered their heads, pretending to study paperwork while secretly wiping tears. Helena felt her own knees weaken. For years she had prayed for exactly this moment. Not a miracle. Simply a smile. She invited Graham into her office later that afternoon, not as a worker but as someone who had accomplished what countless professionals could not. She wanted to understand how he had reached her daughter so effortlessly. Graham explained that there had been no secret. He had simply spoken the language Elodie understood best instead of expecting her to adapt to everyone else's world. Children, he said gently, often bloom when someone meets them where they already are rather than pulling them toward impossible expectations. Those words stayed with Helena. She realized that despite all her love, she had spent years desperately trying to restore the daughter she remembered instead of fully embracing the remarkable child standing before her. Helena asked Graham about his life. He hesitated. Eventually he admitted that raising Owen alone had become increasingly difficult. He accepted every honest job available because providing stability mattered more than pride. He never wanted charity. He only wanted opportunity. Helena respected that immediately. Rather than offering money, she offered him something entirely different. She asked whether he would consider joining Whitmore Technologies as an accessibility consultant, helping create products that genuinely serve deaf communities instead of merely satisfying legal requirements. She wanted someone who understood compassion better than corporate presentations. Graham was stunned. He had never imagined his volunteer experience could become meaningful employment. Still, he worried. He had no impressive qualifications. No university degree. No executive experience. Helena smiled for the first time that day and explained that kindness, patience, and lived experience often taught lessons impossible to find inside textbooks. Within weeks, Graham joined the company. His first suggestion surprised everyone. Instead of beginning with complicated technology, he recommended teaching basic sign language to employees throughout the headquarters. Some executives quietly questioned the idea. They considered it unnecessary. Too expensive. Too time-consuming. But Helena approved it immediately. Gradually something beautiful happened. Receptionists learned greetings. Security staff learned directions. Engineers learned everyday conversations. Cafeteria workers learned how to ask children about their favorite meals. The office transformed into a place where deaf visitors no longer felt invisible. Elodie began visiting regularly. Every day she found more people able to welcome her with moving hands instead of uncertain smiles. Her confidence slowly returned. She started drawing again. She laughed during lunchtime games. She even helped teach new employees simple signs, proudly correcting gentle mistakes with patient encouragement. Meanwhile, Owen watched his father come home happier than he had been in years. Instead of exhausted silence, evenings became filled with hopeful conversations about meaningful work, new friendships, and dreams that no longer seemed impossible. One afternoon the company hosted a community open day for families with disabled children. Hundreds of visitors filled the bright campus under warm sunshine. Games, workshops, music interpreted through vibration, storytelling with sign language, and inclusive activities spread laughter across every corner. During the closing presentation, Helena stood before the crowd. She spoke honestly. She admitted that success had once convinced her every problem could be solved through money, influence, or determination. Her daughter had taught her otherwise. Healing often began with understanding. Belonging began with listening. Love sometimes required changing ourselves rather than changing those we cared about. Then she invited Graham and Elodie onto the stage. Instead of applause, something remarkable unfolded. The entire audience silently raised their hands and waved them in the air, the deaf community's beautiful version of clapping. Elodie looked across hundreds of smiling faces celebrating in her own language. Tears streamed down Helena's cheeks. Graham glanced toward Owen, who proudly copied every hand movement beside the audience. For the first time since losing his wife, Graham felt life opening another chapter instead of merely surviving the previous one. Months later, Whitmore Technologies launched a groundbreaking communication platform designed alongside deaf educators, families, and children rather than simply for them. It quickly became recognized not because of clever marketing but because people finally felt seen. Whenever journalists praised Helena's leadership, she always redirected attention. She explained that innovation began the day one ordinary single father carrying a worn toolbox reminded an entire company that inclusion was not created through expensive equipment but through genuine human connection. Graham never considered himself extraordinary. He simply believed everyone deserved to be understood. That belief changed countless lives. Elodie eventually became a confident young ambassador for deaf children, encouraging families never to mistake silence for emptiness. She reminded audiences that voices existed in many forms and every person deserved someone willing to learn their language. Helena stopped measuring success by annual profits. She measured it by smiles returning to faces that had almost forgotten joy. Graham continued raising Owen with the same quiet humility that had always defined him, teaching his son that the strongest people were rarely the loudest. Real strength appeared in patient hearts, open minds, and hands willing to lift others without expecting recognition. Before this story comes to its close, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment sharing a moment when someone's kindness, patience, or understanding changed your life, or tell us what lesson touched your heart the most. As the final guests left the company courtyard beneath the bright afternoon sun, Elodie noticed Graham preparing to drive home. She ran toward him, signed 3 simple words that required no voice, and hugged him tightly. Those nearby understood exactly what she had said because many had learned the language themselves. She had signed, "Thank you, friend." Graham smiled, hugged her gently, then walked back to his old car where Owen waited with a proud grin. The vehicle was still old. The bills had not magically disappeared. Life remained imperfect. Yet hope had quietly replaced despair, proving that the greatest miracles are rarely loud. Sometimes they arrive through a pair of caring hands, a forgotten language remembered at exactly the right moment, and one child's smile powerful enough to silence an entire room forever. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we always remember that the most valuable language in the world is not spoken with our voices but with compassion, understanding, and the courage to make another person feel truly seen.